they're lucky, but because they built momentum while others waited for miracles. That's the edge. That's the gap. That's the reason 99% stay spectators while 1% step into stages, onto platforms, into power. Not because of what they knew, but because of what they did. So what will you do? Will you keep collecting information? Will you keep stacking knowledge? Will you keep convincing yourself that next month, next week, next season will be better timing? Or will you do the thing? Make the call, send the email, publish the post, say no to the distraction, say yes to the project, launch the business, start the routine, build the offer, open the document, click the button, take the meeting, post the video, write the page, say the truth, live the standard, act, because the longer you delay, the heavier it gets. The longer you hesitate, the further you drift from the version of you that could have built the life you were meant to live. But the second you move, the second you choose motion over maintenance, you reclaim all of it. You reclaim your edge. You reclaim your direction. You reclaim your destiny, not through knowledge, through action. Because once you move, you remember who you are. You remember that you were not made to collect wisdom and sit still. You were not made to stockpile potential and wait for permission. You were made to build, to break ground, to bring to life the fire that's been burning in your chest since the day you first dreamed something bigger. And the longer you ignore that fire, the more it turns into frustration. Not because you're incapable, but because you were never meant to live a life of theory. You were born to embody the result, to look around at your life and say, this, every bit of it, is what I created. This was once a thought in my mind. Now it's a fact in the world. Because I moved when others waited. I acted when others doubted. I walked when others watched. And the truth is, your life is already full of evidence. Everywhere you look, you're surrounded by the outcomes of past actions or past inaction. Your body, it reflects the habits you've honored. Your bank account, it reflects the decisions you've repeated. Your calendar, it reflects the standards you've enforced. Your relationships, they reflect the boundaries you've allowed. Nothing in your life is neutral. Everything is either a reward or a receipt. And that truth doesn't shame you, it empowers you. Because it means if you don't like what you see, you don't need a new life, you need new actions. Not more knowledge, not more advice, just more movement. Intentional, precise, repeated action built around the person you say you want to become. Not tomorrow, not after the next book, not once it's perfect. Now, because there is no perfect moment. There is no flawless strategy. There is no ready. There is only the person who acts and the person who doesn't. And the ones who act, they don't win because they have less fear. They win because they move in spite of it. Because action, especially imperfect action, doesn't just produce results, it destroys fear. Every time you take the step, even while trembling, you teach your nervous system, I move anyway. I build anyway. I lead anyway. And soon, the fear begins to fade. Not because it disappeared, but because it no longer decides for you. That's the shift. That's the rebirth. That's the moment you become dangerous, because now nothing stops you. Not the unknown, not the risk, not the rejection, not the waiting. You don't wait. You work. You execute. You build the muscle of follow-through. And that muscle, that's what wealth is made of. Because wealth is not a result, it's a rhythm. The rhythm of daily action. The rhythm of choosing movement over meaninglessness. The rhythm of walking the talk, not once, but always. And when your rhythm becomes consistent, your results become inevitable. That's when people call you gifted. That's when they say, you're lucky. You're built different. But you'll know the truth. You weren't gifted. You weren't lucky. You weren't chosen. You just moved. You chose action. And action chose you back. And when action chooses you back, something deeper happens. You stop questioning if you're worthy. You stop negotiating with your own potential. You stop explaining yourself to people who gave up on themselves. Because now, your confidence isn't a facade, it's earned. It's built from the trenches, from the late nights when you showed up anyway, from the early mornings when no one saw the work, from the days you didn't feel like it and still executed. This is the part where self-respect is born. When you no longer need to prove anything because you've proven it to yourself. And that's when you start building from power, not insecurity, not desperation, not neediness, but real, grounded, unshakable power. Because you've closed the gap between what you know and what you do. You've aligned your insight with your actions. And now every step reinforces your identity. Every win multiplies. Every habit stacks. Every day compounds. Because action has momentum on its side. And momentum doesn't care where you started. It doesn't care how long you waited. It doesn't care what your past looks like. It only cares about now. It only responds to movement. So move. Even if your voice shakes. Even if your hands tremble. Even if no one claps, no one sees, no one believes. Move because you believe. You believe in the law of the harvest. You believe in the power of sowing. You believe that the smallest consistent action will always outrun the grandest unexecuted idea. And when you believe that deeply, you become unstoppable. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You start acting like someone who doesn't break their own word. You start executing like someone who doesn't need hype to stay consistent. You start deciding like someone who trusts their future more than their feelings. And suddenly, knowledge isn't a weight. It's fuel. Because now it has somewhere to go. It's no longer stuck in your mind. It's moving through your habits, through your voice, through your work, through your results. And that's the moment everything shifts. Because now the world takes notice. Not because you shouted, but because you showed. Not because you posted, but because you performed. Not because you talked about the dream, but because you lived it step by imperfect step. And while others are still wondering, still waiting, still watching, you're walking, you're building, you're doing. And doing is what makes you rich. Not rich in theory, not rich in potential, rich in proof. Because proof is what the world pays attention to. Proof is what creates legacy. Proof is what inspires change. And proof only comes through action. So act. Again. Now. Always. Because when your life becomes a pattern of action, you stop chasing results, they start chasing you. Opportunities find you. People follow you. Doors open for you, not because of who you know, but because of what you've done. Because action is magnetic. It doesn't whisper. It commands. It tells the world, this is someone who moves. This is someone who doesn't just know, they embody. They don't just speak, they deliver. They don't just learn, they lead. And that's when everything changes. Not overnight, but undeniably. Because action rewires everything. It rewires your posture, your voice, your circle, your bank account, your confidence, your destiny. It separates you from the version of yourself that used to wait, the one that second-guessed, the one that kept researching, kept stalling, kept asking for one more sign. You no longer need signs. You are the sign. You no longer need more proof. You are the proof. Because now your life isn't built on hopes. It's built on habits. It's not sculpted by luck. It's carved by movement. And here's the final truth. The gap between where you are and where you want to be, it's not filled with information. It's filled with execution. You don't need another podcast. You don't need another guru. You don't need another course. You need to do what you already know. You need to trust the process you've been avoiding. You need to become the person you keep writing about, dreaming about, praying to become. And that person, they don't live in your thoughts. They live in your actions. So go. Move. Write the email. Make the call. Launch the idea. Wake up earlier. Train your body. Speak with certainty. Show up relentlessly. Do what scared you yesterday. Live like the future depends on today, because it does. This is your moment, not to learn more, but to act more, because knowledge doesn't make you rich. Action does. No investment on earth will yield a return like the one you make in yourself. Not the stock market, not real estate, not crypto, not gold. You are the asset. You are the foundation. You are the compound interest machine that multiplies every dollar, every minute, every ounce of effort when it is invested in the right place, within. The greatest tragedy in life is not poverty, it is potential left untouched. It is talent abandoned for comfort. It is genius buried under fear. And the root of all of it? A failure to invest in the one thing that controls everything else, you. Because here's the truth, the world won't scream at you. Your income will never outgrow your self-worth. Your business will never outgrow your belief. Your lifestyle will never outrun your identity. That's why you start with yourself. You build the person before you build the empire. You sharpen the mind before you scale the plan. You develop the soul before you demand the reward. You don't wait to feel worthy. You train yourself to be worthy. You invest in knowledge. You invest in skills. You invest in mindset, in mentorship, in mastery, not because you're broken, but because you've decided to rise. Because you refuse to be the same person in 5 years. You refuse to recycle the same goals, the same excuses, the same stagnation year after year, hoping that something external will change what you haven't changed internally. You don't gamble on luck. You bet on growth, because growth is never an accident. It's a decision you make when no one's watching, a commitment you renew when everyone else is sleeping, and it begins in your mindset. The mind is the soil, and every investment you plant there grows into action or apathy. If your thoughts are poor, every dollar you earn will slip through your hands. If your thoughts are rich, you could lose everything and rebuild it 10 times faster because the wealth wasn't in your bank account, it was in your blueprint. You can't scale a weak mind. You can't win with a scarcity spirit. You can't build an abundant life with survival programming. So the first investment is mental. You upgrade your thinking. You rewire your beliefs. You eliminate toxic scripts. I'm not good enough. People like me don't win. Success is for others. No,